you're happy about the opportunity because you're making a film on a larger platform and you're doing things, but at the same time, you're still dealing with the fact that they're forcing you into a mold as opposed to you being the glass and you pour the water and the water takes the form of the glass.
Welcome to the Scriptcake podcast. I am your host, Lavender Gill, and this week we are proud to have award-winning writer, producer, and director Greg Carter on the podcast. Greg has written, produced, and directed over a dozen feature films and was the showrunner for the series Fifth Ward for AMC, based on his debut feature film. His most recent features, Hip Hop Family Christmas and Hip Hop Family Christmas Wedding, aired on VH1, were co-produced by Jamie Foxx, starred Carrie Hilson, Neo, and Redmond. Greg has been nominated for an NAACP award, won an Independent Spirit Award, and has been inducted to the Texas Film Hall of Fame. Oh yeah, and he's a professor at the University of Houston. Welcome to the Scriptcake podcast, Greg.
Thank you, Lavender. I love being here. I appreciate the opportunity to be on.
No, we're excited to have you. You've got a almost 30-year career going in feature filmmaking. And what I'd love to start the podcast out with is, first of all, where did that passion for filmmaking come from? And how did you get from there to your first feature film?
Well, I started out as a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed junior in college. I was attending Texas A&M. At that time, I had the dubious flirtation with the idea of being an engineer. And it was about that time that my older brother suggested to me that I take in filmmaking as something to do, or at least acting. And I said, well, maybe I'll take an acting class because I needed an elective anyway my junior and senior year. So it just so happened that while I was at Texas A&M, I got a gentleman by the name of Charles Gordon, the first African-American to win a Pulitzer Prize. He was guest lecturing at Texas A&M. And I took his class, his theater class, and I was like, okay, I don't want to be an engineer anymore. This is what I want to be. Of course, my mom and dad were like, what? But I was kind of bitten. And
I want to interject for 1 second. I am 21 credits away from a civil engineering degree with a minor focus in environmental. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. That was my thing, being an environmental engineer. And it was one of those things where fortune, I guess, favors the bold, as they say, because I kind of knew what I wanted to do and kind of moved in that direction. I finished my engineering degree from A&M, but I was always like trying to figure out ways to be and do entertainment and film and theater. From there, I ended up back in Houston, and I worked with a couple of youth organizations, coaching basketball and whatnot. But then I got involved with an organization called the Fifth Ward Enrichment Program. And with that organization, when I first joined, I was driving to work one day, and I heard the guy say that he was, looking for people to volunteer. And I said, well, I should do that. And when I went there, he said, well, what can you do? I said, well, I can coach basketball. We got somebody to do that. And I said, well, I haven't, I make movies, I dabble with that. Maybe I could do that. And I just kind of started writing scripts and everything. And he said, well, yeah, we could do that. So that was the beginning of the Fifth Ward Enrichment Program. And I was doing it with an organization called SWAMP, the Southwest Alternate Media Project, and also the Houston Commission of the Arts. I think that's what it's called now. But anyway, so we had about it was like more like 10 students who we taught how to shoot movies using the old Super 8 film cameras. Mm-hmm. And then we had a thing where we would take the movies, and then we did like a little premiere with we showed all the films. And Lori McDonald was my co-teacher in that situation. And after that, I was just like, yo, this is what I want to do. Because I had talked to the students, and they were all from Fifth Ward, which is my neighborhood. And after I heard their stories and I thought about my stories, that was the beginning of the Fifth Ward screenplay. And when I wrote that, it was one of those things where I wrote the script and I started sending it around to get somebody to make it. And then I thought to myself, well, why am I sending this script around for someone to make it? I can make it. So uh, Greg took off the writer hat, became the producer, and I started looking for a director to direct it. And then I said, well, why am I giving it for a director? I just hire myself. So I ended up wearing all three hats, writer, director, producer on my first film, Fifth Ward. And that film did really well. It got accepted into South by Southwest and screened there. And that was the beginning of my meteoric rise to fame, which took another 30 years. Well, they say it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. It took me like 30, but that's okay. I'll take it.
I feel your pain. I feel your pain. Everyone asked me how I directed my first feature film, and I'm like, well, I produced it and I raised the money and I hired the director.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Sure. Absolutely. So the Fifth Ward comes out. It has a great reception.
Right.
It gets into, you know, one of the most prestigious film festivals still in the country. And
Right.
then where do you go from here? How do you capitalize on that?
Well, at that time, you know, it's a much different landscape as far as film and distribution and everything else. So I'm sitting there trying to figure out where the movie's going to go. And, you know, there was such a direct pipeline. There were small distributors who would pick up films and then, you know, basically take them to Blockbuster and Hollywood Video. And around about that time, there still was not enough content being made by the studios to fill the enormous need that was being created by, you know, the brick and mortar stores that were opening with DVDs. And it was about that time that we started, you know, having, you know, real conversations with some of these smaller companies about doing, you know, another film. And you know, and normally they would. I was at the Austin Film Festival speaking about this about a week ago, and I was telling them that my hallmark when I first started, because my movie Fifth Ward was a drama, but it was really like a drama just set in the hood. But there was a lot of it was an urban drama. Now that is not to be confused with urban action. So I you know, if you go into the my genre by default became like if you look at any at that time, if you went into any, you know, like video store and there was a black man on the cover of of a movie with a gun in his hand, that was where I was making my money. so 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 I started making urban action movies, and my first movie after Fifth Ward was a movie called Thug Life that I did for a company called Maverick Entertainment, and it did really well. And so, you know, and you know, there's that always that moment where you go from being a first time filmmaker to a filmmaker. And that's really that hard leap to make, because to make a second movie, it normally means that your first movie's been some kind of way successful financially so that people will give you money to make a second movie and a third and a fourth. And that was the beginning of the journey. Thug Life, I had always liked Tupac and different things about him and what he was doing. So, you know, they had this idea to do this movie. Uh, well, I kind of had an idea, but they wanted to do it too about almost a modern retelling of the movie The Warriors. And those who are not familiar with the movie The Warriors, about a group of guys who are on the wrong side of town and they got to fight their way through all the gangs in New York to get back to their side of town. So we took a riff off of that with Thug Life, and we had a group of guys who went to a party and they were trying to figure out uh, you know, what's what to meet some girls. And then there's a murder that happens, and then they got to fight from, you know, they're basically on foot trying to get from their side of the hood, from where they are to their part of town, to their hood, right? And so that movie did good. And then Maverick came at me again about, hey, do you want to do another movie? We wrote a script that we'd like you to do. And it kind of continued on like that. That movie was uh, My Big Fat Hip Hop Family. Now, listen to that name. That sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Because it sounds like my last couple movies. So I wrote the script and they liked it and we went into production. So I was making movies for those small urban action distributors that you would find in Blockbuster and Hollywood Video. There was a couple of them. I mentioned Maverick, but there was Xenon and a couple other companies that were really specializing in that. And they needed someone who could kind of make those. And that's where I kind of learned to hone my skill before I went to film school. So I actually started making movies uh, around about the same time I was going to film school. So
Wow.
it was one of those advantageous just moments in time that will probably never happen again because the industry just has evolved so quickly with digital platforms. Although I have heard, I don't know if you heard, that Netflix is now getting ready to start opening brick and mortar stores, which is crazy because they ran Blockbuster out of business, but it's craziness.
I do know they're building a big facility here in New Jersey, not too far from where I live in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And I know that they started buying up classic movie theaters and renovating them and redoing that, but I wasn't aware of the brick and mortar stores. Interesting.
Netflix. Yeah, 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 absolutely.
All right, maybe we're coming full circle.
That's how things always end up, don't they? I think the idea that streaming platforms were a haven of just unfound buckets of cash is now being debunked a bit. And now I think people really understand that they need the model where uh, the person that's handling your sell through to the consumer, uh, you need that person so that you can focus on making theatrical movies and so that you can maximize your IPs. It's so funny because when we talk in these terms like IP and content, we just need to talk like that. We just say movies. I'm making a movie now. I'm making content. It's just like weird. I guess I'm old fashioned.
No, no, no. I think, if you look at streaming, it's basically modern day version of Blockbuster. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Now there's 50 different streamers now. Before there was just Blockbuster and HBO Max, which is now Max or something like that. And now there's
yeah.
I think we're subscribing to 8 or 9 of them, Paramount Plus and Peacock and Hulu and so on and so forth, Disney Plus. There's so many of them. But I think in a good way, it's the wild, wild west again because all those
Right.
places are looking for content.
Correct.
You know,
Correct. Correct. It opened up a lot of doors. Uh, I do feel that in some way we've lost something because there's a very transactional nature to making movies now. It doesn't feel, I mean, it almost feels like, uh, because the content hustle has kind of shifted a lot, it feels that, you know, film festivals aren't what they used to be. They were the destination
mhm.
back in the day. You would make a film and you would hustle through the film festival circuit. And of course, the film festival circuit was a vetting tool for, the studios and to find new talent and great films um, that they wouldn't necessarily make. And what ended up happening, it almost feels like the film festivals are now, you know, if your film ends up in a film festival, it's almost like you failed because the people aren't necessarily going there to buy movies and put them in DVD. If you're buying movies, a lot of times, they might end up on your streaming platform, and that doesn't feel like quite the victory that you were always hoping for when you were young. I can't wait to be on HBO Max. No, you wanted to be in the big movie theater, and sit down and have popcorn. And if you didn't make it, okay, maybe you end up in Blockbuster or Hollywood Video. And so with a smaller distrib, right? I think aggregators kind of changed the landscape of how you get your movie shown. They don't have a passion um, for cultivating talent or either getting the movie into a certain position. For them, they have to deliver, 10 movies this month to Netflix, and they're just kind of getting them in, doing what they do and pushing them out. And there's not, you have to think really hard about a movie that went to, Sundance, was a breakout hit and hit theaters. They normally end up working their way through, a aggregator to a SVOD service or something like that. And, so I think we've kind of lost something a little bit. And of course that takes the shine off the film festivals. I mean, the ones that are there that are established are good, but then I think it still is a little hard for, you know, the excitement of traipsing around the country for 6 months and hitting all the major festivals and are the ones you could get in and building a buzz. Now it just seems like there's the big ones, and if you get in one of the big ones, you're good. But if you don't, uh, you could the journey that where you end up, the destination, which is on the SVOD service, you could have just went straight to the SVOD service once you made the movie anyway. So,
True, that's true.
yeah. So it's sometimes I wonder, how the young folks are sticking in there and hanging and making it.
Well, on the one hand, it seems like there's 100 film festivals every weekend just in the
Yeah.
US alone. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of, and you have to vet them to some extent. But
Yeah.
I will say, I'm just finished up the festival tour on a feature that I directed. And we went to a couple of smaller film festivals that, we didn't get into the massive ones, but we had tremendous experiences
Yeah.
at those festivals. Did we get bought at those festivals? No. Did we find a sales agent? Yes. Did we get multiple offers from distributors? Absolutely. Were a lot of those offers just horrible offers? Yes. There's a bunch coming in this week because this coming week is AFM, the American Film
That's
Market.
right. That's right. Yeah.
In
Yeah.
Santa Monica. And so a bunch of people are scrambling and reaching back out going, hey, because they need product to go over there and try to sell. But I do say I agree with you in that there's a personalization that's lost. There's a relationship element that is lost where you're working with the same company and making multiple films. And a lot of these companies, they just grab your film, throw it in a catalog and send it out. And if somebody buys it, great. And if nobody buys it, that's great. They don't care because there's no real personalization there. And
Right.
yeah, it is getting that way. But I want to get back on track with your career. You mentioned Remember This Name, hip hop feature film, and I think your last two films were that. Can you tell me about how those got developed and where they went and what happened with them?
I heard an interview one time, and when I listened to it, it was really interesting. It was I forgot his name, Ron Howard's producing partner,
Brian Grazer.
Brian Grazer. Brian Grazer. I heard an interview Brian Grazer did, and he was talking about how he was trying to get stuff done, and you know, and and ultimately as a producer, it still comes down to having IP and then getting that IP. It's so good that someone will write a check for you, and when you are proven that you can get something made and it's good, the people will bring the idea to you as a producer, have you develop it with them, and then you make it for them. I started out as a writer and who wrote stage plays, and so I tell people, my students at U of H, and I tell whenever I'm speaking, I said, writing is hard, and the only thing that it never gets easy. And I told them, I said, what happens is if you do it enough, it doesn't get easy. You just get used to it, and so for the most part, that whole creative process. So I had gotten to the point to where I would, if someone gave me an idea that I liked, or or if something I would, I could buckle down and sit down and write a script. And for the most part, it would always hit the metrics that they wanted to have, whether it be funny, romantic, sexy, but also come across as something that could be made for a price point. And so I had a couple of movies that were made that I worked on as a director. I was brought in to direct and produce, and I began to see a trend. I said, wait a second. Every year, there's got to be somewhere between 50 to 100 Christmas movies made, even for the small screen. And I was like, man, that's a burgeoning little nugget there. And then you had the emergence, of course, uh, in the early teens of like these dedicated networks like Hallmark and Lifetime that they wanted Christmas movies when they weren't doing the story of the husband who slept with the sister's wife or the bride and all kind of stuff. They were doing Christmas movies. So I said, well, let me just
Yeah,
write something.
they seem to
And
either do Christmas movies or women killing their husband movies.
yeah, exactly. It's one of the two, which is quite an indictment on where we are for the course of entertainment. But so I had that conversation with myself, and I said, okay, all right, well, let me just see what's up, because I had a movie I did called Lucky Girl that got turned into a Christmas movie, and it turned out really good. I did a movie for BET and a producer by the name of Dan Garcia. So I wrote on it. I didn't take a writing credit, but I wrote the script with Dan. I rewrote the script, and then I also had a conversation with him about producing as well as directing. And so the movie did really well for BET. A little bit later, and BET is Paramount. So a little bit later, I got a phone call from some folks about, writing a Christmas script. And I said, well, I kind of did one. I mean, it's pretty much, it's a romantic comedy that just happens during the holidays. I mean, that doesn't seem very difficult. So I wrote it and put it out there. And at the time, I was in the middle of a TV series, Fifth Ward, and so the script got. I sent it out, to the group of, I don't call them near to well, but producers who are, basically in that middle ground where they're kind of like a couple of rungs on the ladder above me. But if I write something that they like, they can, you know, fight the good fight in the room where I can't get into to get it made.
Mhm.
And so after I wrote it, it's almost like that thermostat thing. You set it and forget it. Just so then about a month and about a year and a half later, I get a call from a friend of mine, Jatari Turner, who worked with Jamie Foxx, and he said, this was right after the situation with George Floyd, and everybody was all in their political correctness mode, right? Everybody was like, oh, man, we got to show that we care about the community, and I was like, what? Okay, so then they were like, well, what can we find that involves folks and people of color, and that brought about a look on the Paramount side. Now, keep in mind at that time it was CBS Viacom. They hadn't remerged back. They had just remerged back, and they were trying to figure out what was going to be the thing. And so they wanted to try to do something for the holidays where they would kind of present this idea that they're edgy Christmas movies, right? So if you have Lifetime, you kind of have these safe, banal kind of romantic comedies formulated, but they wanted these edgy Christmas movies that had something to do with music. And that was the whole pitch, I guess, from the creatives to the board. This was something that had happened, I guess, well, let me back up a step. So there was a lady named Megan who was over at Hallmark, and that script had been submitted by another friend of mine, Dominique Telson, who was trying to get something made. What had happened was that there had been a lot of these execs, when they leave a network, they actually have to like leave anything that they brought in. And so this, I think one exec, she knew she liked the script, but she was going from, head of development over at Hallmark or Lifetime, whichever one it was, to MTV. And so uh, what I understand is that I think she said, "Hey, I got this great thing, Hip Hop Family Christmas. Could you bring it in through the back door?" In other words, someone she knew, she had them represent it to her at MTV. So then it wouldn't be like she broke the rules. Of course, I didn't give out her last name, so I didn't bust her out. So the script I think it was called Hip Hop Family something. It wasn't the title that it was, and that often happens. The titles will change. So anyway, they got the script and they liked it. And of course, when they like a script, they want to completely change it. They want to change it up. And so they did, and well, it still stayed for the most part, accurate to what I wrote. And then we went into production. I was producing and directing, and then was partnered with Jamie Foxx. And Jamie Foxx, Foxhole had just gotten this whole deal that was kind of tied into, this progressive kind of, we want to work with people of color after the George Floyd thing. So we went into production. That would have been August of 2021. Yeah, August of 2021. And we shot the movie down here in Houston. And we started in August, like I said, and the production went really good and everybody was very happy. So the first thing I said, "Hey, you want to do a part two?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to do a part two." And then we did part two, which was Hip Hop Family Christmas Wedding, which is, real creative marketing. Just, they said, "Why? Listen, this is branding. We're not going to screw it up." And actually, it was funny because they wanted to do a trilogy. And the only thing that stopped it was that we were going to do Hip Hop Family Christmas Vacation, and this is where the lead character was one of the leads was going to find out she's pregnant. She just got married in wedding. She found out she's pregnant, and the whole family ends up coming together again for Christmas, but this time in Miami. But we're going to shoot it in Texas, like in Corpus Christi. And then the strike hit, and that was it. So it's funny. I joke. I was telling people, I said, "Congratulations, you made it to the mountaintop. You're making studio and network movies." And then it's like, "Congratulations, you're making new studio movies." And now when they shut down, you're shut down too. It's not like an independent where you can just keep doing whatever. You're shut down. But I often, look at my journey and I think about how things develop and unfold. And, I can find myself getting really comfortable, like making movies and content. And in that particular case, I do feel like I got a little comfortable making hip hop family. I mean, they wanted to do four of these things, and then the TV series. If it hadn't been for the pause, I feel like I'm talking about when Marvel snapped his finger. We had the pause, the strikes. But what it did do was allow me to go back and start creating new IP, and a lot of great things have kind of come out of that. I can't give all the details, but a lot of great things have come out of that, and just sitting back down and writing again and trying to get things together. So
Okay. Well, I want to get your take on one thing. You touched on it briefly, and you and I fall into the same category as writers of color.
yes.
And, I tend to personally write movies that deal with, my situation of duality, dealing with the Indian and American cultures. And but a lot of work that I do for other people, doesn't really touch on that too much. How do you navigate this world, trying to make products that, not only allow you to have a career and, make some money and have some success, but also, allow you to explore worlds that, you just don't see very often on major network platforms.
Yeah. The one thing that I found is that, no one likes to read in this business, and no one likes to think in this business, or even watch movies. You'd be surprised how many people are making decisions and they never watch movies. It's just kind of, I think it comes from a sense that they're overwhelmed, and so they tend to follow trends. And so like for instance, if you, Lavender, were going to a situation where you're meeting some execs somewhere, you know, they might pick one or two Indian kind of filmmakers, and they just go to that person until the well runs dry. And the same thing happens on with people who are Black. I mean, the networks like to try to, they just go to the same people over and over again. You really have to work very hard to kind of get just the opportunity to get in the door. And so, you find yourself a lot of times, it can be frustrating because, you don't you don't get enough bites at the apple. A lot of times there's so much more to what you want to do as a filmmaker, but you do find yourself telling the story that they feel safe telling. There was an interesting thing that happened a couple of months ago where they had made they redid the Velma thing for HBO, and this kind of ties, and so it got a lot of backlash and different things because of the way that it was presented, right?
Yeah, I think that was
And
Mindy Kaling was in charge of that, I believe.
Mindy Kaling was in charge of that, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing, and there's no doubt about it. There were execs making those decisions with Mindy Kaling the whole time. It's like they were basically saying, "Yeah, we love it. Yeah, this is great." And then when it comes out and they're not happy with it, well, we didn't know she was going to do this, and then it's so it's like let's be honest with each other. I mean, like yo, they will give you enough rope to hang yourself. So you always have to be very cognizant of where you keep your feet. You got to keep your feet on the ground because, when I'm making content, it's like, the Hollywood will follow trends, and you kind of have to be your own person as a filmmaker and just hope that eventually, the networks and the SVOD services and the studios kind of come around to seeing that your voice is unique. And it just happens that I'm Black or you're Indian or Latino or whatever, and you can do greater things. But what they tend to do is take a formula that works. So they will take a formula which is like let's say the holiday genre, but we'll make a Black holiday film, or we'll take a hero genre and we'll make a Indian holiday film, Indian superhero film, or we'll make a Black superhero film. So you're happy about the opportunity because you're making a film on a larger platform and you're doing things, but at the same time, you're still dealing with the fact that no one really understands what they're forcing you into a mold as opposed to you being the glass, and you pour the water and the water takes the form of the glass. You know what I'm saying? So I it's two sides of the same coin, I guess, in that way. But I just try to be very judicious in those conversations with myself about, okay, well, what am I doing? What is the vision I'm trying to see? And you begin to learn that, there's a lot of things you do control, but there's so many things you don't control, and you have to just have faith that those people want to make a good film, as misguided as they might be. I found that when I've done film projects and I get notes from producers, they're, what I think a producer's job should be is to help a creative director slash writer or a writer to make smart business decisions for the movie. That's what a good producer, I think, should do. He's not only responsible for hiring the people from front of and behind the camera, but in my particular case, where I'm a writer director, you know, if he's going to, if that producer gives me notes, it's because it's what's best for the business elements of the movie. Now, that's not necessarily what's best for telling a good story, but maybe what it is. Perfect example. If you are going to be making a movie like Creator and you're a producer on Creator, and I love Creator, I thought it was a great movie. Even though I know what you're going for, maybe you go for the happy ending because, in a way, that's what people want. Your producer should be saying, okay, from a business standpoint, I know you want the dark, but honest ending, but maybe a happy ending makes everyone feel, I don't know, better about telling other people you got to go see this movie. You know what I'm saying? So that I hope that by making movies that I feel honest about, I'm being true to my culture as a Black filmmaker, but also true to who I am. Because my dad's a minister, my mom was an educator, and so there's a lot of I don't want to think I make faith-based movies, but and I'm not saying that in a negative connotation. It's just that I have a lot of faith in my movies. So if I were to write a script, I would, have elements of where a higher power touches the protagonist, right? But I might do it in a very Black centric way, like because a lot of times people don't understand the culture. Like if I like when we make movies that deal with a Black person going to get their hair done or they're going to the beauty shop, that's a unique experience than if you go to one of those hair cutting chains for people who are not Black. That's where a lot of socialization happens. We're talking, we're going through, like the ebb and flow of politics and relationships. We're talking shit, um, but that's not all we are. So you have to be very careful that you don't get caught up into tropes. You know what I'm saying? I think that's if there was something I say about being a Black filmmaker, it's like, you when you get the opportunity, you want to make something that's going to be, financially viable. You hope that your producer is helping you make those kind of decisions, but you also want to make your movie, and there's a reason why you're making that movie, and it's not necessarily because you're Black or brown or yellow. It could be because of another group of circumstances. But when you're making it because of another reason, because you're not Black, brown, or yellow, don't let it be that the people you're making a movie for, maybe whether it's Netflix or Universal, NBC, or whatever, don't let them turn your movie into this monochromatic Black storytelling Black movie. You know what I'm saying? Because that's easily happen because you're given this opportunity. You don't want to tell anybody no. You don't want to make anybody mad. Oh, who is this guy? We've been making movies for 100 years. You come in here and you got demands or whatever. So you have to. It's definitely a balancing act that I think that all of us as filmmakers have to kind of maneuver through, because you're given an opportunity to get millions of dollars and make something, but you still got to make the movie you want to make. So it is not. I imagine it. I was making earlier in the interview. I was talking about it's never easy. You just get used to it. It's never easy. You just get used to it, and you begin to understand that um, everybody who started out at one point in time, they wanted to be a writer, director, or an actor. The three big ones. But they made that left turn somewhere and they ended up in exec land.
Right.
And they feel very good at telling you um, what they would do if they were directing, what they do if they were writing, and what do they do if they were how they should act this scene out. So I think that's something that you don't want to you need to work with them, both those people, because they're putting money in your pocket and giving you the ability to make your vision, but you still got to make your movie. Because in that example I gave, when Mindy Kaling made that movie, made her TV series, I guarantee you everybody in the room before they released it were completely excited and happy about it. And when it went left, she did that. I don't know what happened. Come on now, be honest, you were right there with her, So yeah. So that's a tough thing about being a person of color, If it goes too far, somebody gets pissed. I heard this said, and it's true. Uh, Directors get a bad hand because when something goes right, they get all the credit, but when something goes wrong, you get all the blame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's what you're signing up for when you're directing a film. I think that's part of the process. So,
Yeah.
what would you say to young BIPOC screenwriters about entering this industry? What advice would you give them?
I'll get the best way I could do it is a story. So when I was early on making, my little movies where the black man would have a gun in his hand on the box cover, I got into a situation where, um, I was told to do a certain thing a certain way, and when it was all said and done, uh, I still just held to my gut and did it my way. Because either way it goes, you know, you still want to be able to look at that work and be pleased with what you did and happy with it, and not say, "Oh man, I should have," because there's a lot of second guessing. So I would tell young screenwriters, just write what you want. Well, I mean, think about what the industry is looking for, but write the stories that appeal to you, that you love, because um, ultimately, it's what fuels you to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to people at this film festival I was at a week and a half ago, and it was amazing to me when I talked to people. I asked them, how many films have you had produced? And it wasn't really like there were some people that wrote 15 scripts and hadn't had anything made.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a certain security in the fact that you're writing a script with the idea that you're not taking any chances by giving the studio, you're just writing what you want, and you're just writing what you want. But if you really want to make a living at it, you got to take chances and write things that you're not comfortable with. And I was like, well, why aren't you, I gave the example that when I was starting out, I would go into a Blockbuster video or Hollywood video, and I'd look at movies and flip over the box and see who made it, and I would reach out to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that logical process isn't happening. So if you're a young filmmaker, a writer of color, I think you have to begin to think about your stories as stories that happen to be by someone who is a person of color. Uh, because if you think of yourself as a Indian filmmaker, a Latino filmmaker, or a Black filmmaker, then you're basically editing yourself. You're putting yourself in that box. And I think that's the thing. uh, Hollywood likes boxes because it makes it very easy for them to not think. And people, and like I said, I was saying earlier, you know, you'd be amazed at how many development people don't read scripts. They just read the coverage, or you'd be surprised by how many studios don't watch movies when they're hiring a director. They just read the reviews of the movie that he did last, and so because of that, um, people have a tendency to flunk forward, and everyone's cool with it. That's what you do. And so you find yourself in a situation where people who, and this is not coming from haterade or anything, but as a filmmaker, say, man, I'm better than that or whatever. You probably are. But the position that people get into sometimes is happens because they've just been able to flunk forward, and no one is really watching. And then uh and I do think that there's a lot of things that happen with you know council culture and different things like that where it feeds into that. I think that you know if you're not good at writing women, then collaborate with someone who is good at writing women. It might not be another woman, might be another guy, but figure that out. But don't pretend that that what you're telling is more than your story. If the moment you get into this is a great Black movie and it checks all the boxes, do we have I'm a little against what the Academy just did, where I know why they did, but to be considered a film for an Oscar, you got to have so many characters of color in it and everything else. I think that just makes it more difficult to go the other way, which is to tell our own stories. Our own stories are held in contempt against our own selves. So it's like there's a really great movie that's coming out. I can't wait to see it. It's called American Fiction. I think it's got I can't remember. I think it's coming out in December. But the story is about a writer who writes these very intellectual books and whatever, but it wanted to it's almost like Hollywood Shuffle. Like it was a funny movie that came out years ago. It's like, yo, can you make your novel a little bit more blacker? It's like people who don't look like you are telling you to make your movie more blacker because they're buying into the stereotype that they think you are or you should be.
Yeah.
And so the funny thing about it is that we have these times when you get an opportunity to write and you find yourself doing the same thing. If you find yourself writing stereotypical Black characters, like, oh, why am I okay? Because it's what the people who are hiring you expect for those characters to look like. And sometimes you gotta kind of break that mold. And for me, as a kind of more traditional kind of guy, the way I was brought up, it's like, why do I have to write you know, a male character who is kind of weak and being led by women and everything else in a romantic comedy when I'm not that kind of a guy? I kind of think I'm a traditional, strong, masculine guy, and I want to write strong, traditional, masculine characters. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you choose not to make this movie, then okay, that's fine. I guess we're not making it. But I don't want to write the character that falls into the trope that you think that it should be because you're giving me the money to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I need to make money and pay my bills, but sometimes you got to think about that. So I think that's what I would tell a writer who is a person of color. Just try to find your voice and not the voice that they're telling you should be because you're a writer of color.
Okay. I think that's the same advice you'd probably give non-writers of color.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Truly. Truly. It's really a, because, and it's difficult because, you work really hard to get to the point where people will pay you good money to do what you do. It's not easy, but then you find yourself, you know, buying into the tropes that you said you wouldn't do when you were going to write. And then what are we doing here? So I think I try to think that I would like to think that, that we've evolved past that. Anyone can write a human experience. I think that's what I should say. I think anyone should be able to write a human experience, no matter what color they are. Now, culturally, like I said, there might be nuances, and maybe if you don't understand those nuances, then maybe you find someone who can write with you. So, but I feel like I could write a white chick as well as a black chick, but I can also write an Asian chick or a black dude, you know. And just because I write a black dude doesn't mean I'm gonna be the best at writing a black dude who thinks like Greg Carter thinks. But if I wanted to write a black dude that's gay, I might need some assistance, So I think I think that's the one thing I would hope is that don't drink the Kool-Aid as a writer of color. Don't drink the Kool-Aid that the studio is giving you, Try to keep yourself grounded.
It's an entertaining choice of drink that you've been for this particular commentary. I won't leave that alone.
Oh my God.
It's pretty funny. So, tell me about your teaching now. What is it that you're teaching differently now than you were teaching years ago?
Well, it was funny because when I first started out teaching, I was working as a engineer, and I was really working with younger kids. When I first came out of college with my engineering degree, I was it was in the middle of the economy was in an upheaval. It was around the time the first Gulf War,
Hmm.
and economy was really throwed, and so I taught as a long-term sub in HISD. So I kind of had the idea of working with people who were younger than me, but who needed, guidance. And I really fell into the role good. And then when the economy got better, I worked as an engineer, but then I would teach health and safety classes. And that again is passing knowledge. And I felt very comfortable doing that. And then, for a number of years, I was just making movies. Once I had gotten out of engineering completely and it was just kind of like making movies, it was like I knew what I wanted to do. But, I didn't really think about teaching. And about 2 years ago, around about the time COVID, I had spoken. I was doing I was speaking at this thing for the Houston. No, it was for National Public Black Radio, a black broadcast, And I was speaking there because I just finished Fifth Ward. I think I've just finished season 2 of Fifth Ward. And I was talking, about the experiences and whatnot. And a professor, no, the head of the Valente school, I forgot his name, man. But anyway, he was there and he said, man, would you like to teach a class? I was like, sure. I hadn't taught in a number of years, and that was like, elementary school, but I was like, yeah, sure, I'd love to. And I didn't know how much it was going to affect me. I mean, I really love teaching and passing on knowledge. And I, I sometimes I get kind of meta, but I think my journey is not just about me. My journey is about, helping others along their path. And so I I taught, I think it was summer of 2020. We were going into COVID. And it was one of those things where, Hollywood was shut, well, the world was shut down. It wasn't even like right now where Hollywood is shut down. The world was shut down. And I started teaching and I was like, man, this is really cool. And I was like, And the money's like, okay, it's some money, whatever. And I was like, man, this is where I should be. And and then they were like talking about, well, we want to start a film school at U of H, and we'd love for you to be involved with it. And I was like, okay, cool. So I kept teaching semester after semester, semester, and now I've been teaching almost like 3 years straight
Mhm.
at U of H. And I think I probably check a lot of boxes. Uh, young black director, doing this thing. So, I'm pretty sure I'm a nice kind of piece of jewelry to have around your neck at the U of H. But I really do like seeing people kind of work it out and figure it out, and giving my insight. I we started with a series of classes. Well, I started out teaching social aspects of film. It's a class where we talk about how basically kind of like a film auteur class where we watch movies. And for me, I wanted to have a class where we kind of document how film uh, shows what's happening in our society, whether it's and through different like social constructs, normally like family or race relations or war, those kind of things.
Mhm.
And you can see if a movie made in the 50s about war versus a movie that's made right now about war, how does it show and dissect the subject matter? LGBTQ, different subjects, that we talk about in our society that are important in our society. And so after we did the, I did a couple classes right about the time that um, the Christmas movie got started. We created a situation where there was a class where people basically worked on set. We did it for 2 years. We did it in August of 2021 and August of 2022, last year. And we would have done it again this year had it not been for the strike.
Right.
And so, the students would have an opportunity to work on set. We're making a movie. They get to have the experience of working with actors and working in the department. And I'm actually directing, but there's a portion of the class is being taught in the classroom. So they work on set and then they go to the classroom and you get that experience, that valuable experience, because
Absolutely.
you really didn't have a program like that anywhere in the Southwest. I mean, maybe there's something that's happening in, like USC or UCLA, maybe Tisch, but not here. And even then, we didn't really have it because you don't really have like a actual production they work on. Maybe they make student films or whatnot. So that's so and then about a year ago, Florette Fernando and the people in the College of Arts were like, yo, we're really serious about making this film program. So we came up with a certificate program, a master's certificate program, which we hope to get started in fall of 2024, where if you are a master's candidate, you can get, like right now we have 5 classes that are specialized where you get to learn about film. And that program, we're trying to get, like, again, we're trying to get started in fall of 2024. And what would happen is that you would come to that class and you would, we have one right now that'll be about writing, one that's about producing, one that is about the business of film, one that talks about international production, and the other one is legal. And so, when you came there, if let's suppose you were an art history grad student and you took that, then now you kind of have the wherewithal to kind of slide into a position, maybe, you know, as an exec, you know, green lighting movies that are going to be made over in uh, South Korea. You know what I'm saying? Like that's really happening. Like a lot of like Netflix is investing heavily in Korean content,
Right.
and so and that goes round and round. Like one of the biggest partnerships that's happening right now is between Warner Brothers and China. So they're just minting money with the Meg series. That's actually produced. That's a collaboration between Warner Brothers, Asia, and I think I can't remember the name of the Chinese studio that's over there, and they're just making these movies. So what you're going to see now, I think, is a lot more of that going on because they love our content, we love their content. So we one of the classes that we're adding is that. So we're trying to do something that hasn't really been. I mean, no disrespect to the University of Texas, they have a great film program there, but we're trying to do something a little different in the state with University of Houston and these partnerships that we're trying to develop in this new film program we're trying to build.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
We didn't chat about Fifth Ward as a series. How did that come about, and what was it different about running a series versus a movie?
It's a great experience when you get to be a showrunner. So I had about 20, well, more than 20 years ago, but like 20 odd years ago when I did Fifth Ward, it was meant to be, a larger story, but it was compacted down and to being this feature film that went to South by Southwest and everything. And then what ended up happening was I said, well, let me just write a treatment for what would be a TV series. This is almost 25, 22 years ago. And literally it just sat there and sat there and sat there. And then I had gotten a call from a friend of mine, Angela Northington, and she had came over to AMC. They were creating this new streaming platform called UMC. It's part of AMC, and they were going to specialize in urban content, and then they were going to do original content where they start making movies and TV shows, mainly TV shows. So I gave her the treatment she said, what do you got? I said, well, TV. I said, only thing I got this treatment for Fifth Ward that I wrote, like years ago. And she said, she read, she liked it. I really like this. This could be good. I was like, okay. It was kind of like, I guess the closest thing to it would be almost like if Crash was a TV series, Wow. But we focus more on like the urban Black part of it as opposed to this multi-race thing. But it was still multiracial. We had, if you would watch, the first episode is that there's a Pakistani owner of a grocery store in Fifth Ward. His wife accidentally shoots a girl. There's a lot of protests. He sells his store then to a Vietnamese couple, and they move in. And then one of the teenage kids, who is his younger brother, with the girl, the bullet could have easily hit him when the bullet went through the window and hit the girl. He ends up dating the daughter of the Vietnamese couple, and which all kind of racial tension that goes with that. And then, they've been trying to basically gentrify the neighborhood because Fifth Ward was prime real estate to build this, like this football stadium. So it's like things that were literally ripped from the headlines, right? And so the series did, really good, and they got renewed for a second season. But it's a smaller network, so I'm doing an hour drama, but I'm making it for the first year. I made it for like $35,000 per episode. It was like no money. It didn't even get much, but second season they gave me more. It was like maybe like $200,000 per episode, but it still wasn't,
right.
It wasn't like you and remember, whenever you do a new season, everybody's trying to cash out. Like, yo, Greg's coming, like we getting paid. I'm like, yo, it's not like that, yo. When I went, so after I finished, it was so hard because you want to make it great, but you realize like, you're a showrunner, so it's like you get when everything goes sideways, you got to eat it first. So I was like, I can't move back in with my mama because I want to be an artist. like once you pay everybody, and then you're like, wait a second, what about me? What about Greg? I'm like, oh no. I was like, no, 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 no. It was like, and the funny thing was, I had offers around about that same time. I was talking to a good friend of mine, God rest his soul. Oh my God, he did Snowfall. John Singleton.
Mm-hmm.
And John Singleton wanted me to be an episode director on Snowfall. And I turned him down because I said, well, how often you get a chance to be your own showrunner versus directing episodes?
Right.
And so sometimes I'm like, okay, that was not the brightest thing to do. But I would never change it because once you got that on your resume, you can use it. It's hard to get into the showrunner gig, but you got it on your resume, and the series did good. So there was a chance to do season 3 but I just needed more resources if I was going to do it. And around about that same time, I was teaching at U of H, and I had just started to deal with Paramount and Jamie Foxx over, with the hip hop movies. So I was like, I'm good. Like, I can't go back. I am going to try to bring my TV show back. But maybe we might do it like with Fox Soul or something, another network that has more resources when they want to spend them. You know what I'm saying? But it was a wonderful experience. I love everybody over it. It's called All Black now, but I love everybody over there. Brett Dismuk's a good friend of mine. The lady, Angela Norrington, she's beginning of my second year, she left the company but I love and enjoy Bob Johnson, who created BET. He, of course, is over All Black. So it's one of those things where, you gotta sometimes know when you gotta keep moving and growing,
Mm-hmm.
and don't get caught in your complacency. It's really funny because that when I think about that, I said earlier that we would have been making Hip Hop 3 if it hadn't been for the strike, right? And it seems like God always keeps me in a position where right before I get too comfortable with myself, he kicks the soccer ball and says, okay, now go back out there and hustle again, because I got bigger things planned for you, and I don't want you to get comfortable and get into a situation where you get comfortable making the thing. I need you to learn this. I need you to learn this. I need you to learn this because I got something greater for you. And I think that's what really it's all about, is just being able to understand your place and how you work and tell stories and be ready and be connected enough to not let yourself be less than you can be. So you always should be pushing yourself dynamically into where you're trying to go. So
now I think that I was going to lead you into a wrap up, but that wrapped it up beautifully. Absolutely. That's a great thought to leave our listeners with. And Greg, I thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us on the Scriptcake podcast. Thank you.
If you're looking to connect with me in any kind of way, you can find me on IG. I'm filmmaker Greg Carter on Instagram.
All right, filmmaker Greg Carter on Instagram. Look for him soon. Until next time. Thank you so much for watching this video, and as a small token of my appreciation, I want to offer you a free video course on how to outline your screenplay. I normally charge $299 for this course, but for a limited time, it is free. Now, it is a 5-day course, but I'm giving you 7 days to finish this outline, okay? After 7 days, that course goes away. So if you're not dedicated and you don't want to knock out a killer outline for your screenplay, don't do it. But if you do, click the link below. I can't wait to hear how you like it.